Peace and blessings, family, and welcome to Labors of Love podcast. We are here to inspire, uplift, and enlighten. Each episode, we will be hearing from Black midwives, doulas, and other traditional childbirth supporters who have dedicated their lives to being of service to Black mothers and families in all aspects of the motherhood journey. This evening, I have the privilege of speaking with Angelica Knight of Blue Moon Doula Services. Angelica is an educator, doula, and exercise physiologist from North Carolina. Angelica studied exercise physiology through her undergrad and master's degrees, taking on employment after graduation that centered on her population of interest, studying exercise science and its relationship to pregnancy. As a recruitment coordinator, she was drawn to birthwork, attending childbirth education and breastfeeding classes. Shortly after leaving research, she started her pursuit of her doula work part-time in late 2019. While she worked at a local hospital, she has been practicing as a doula almost for 2 years now. Angelica is also currently enrolled in a Pathway to IBCLC Lactation program, as well to expand and learn better ways to promote breastfeeding rates within the community. Thank you for joining us this evening, and welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome, Angelica. I am so glad that you could join us this evening on Labors of Love podcast. It is definitely a privilege to have you. We don't have you for a long time, so I definitely want to just jump right in and kind of, I always say the bios don't do any, do you justice. You can only fit but so much in. So please let us know, who is Angelica and how did we get on this path?
Oh man. First I want to say thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's exciting to have this conversation. So my path to become a doula, it was very interesting how it happened. It was nowhere in my initial plan for my life. I actually wanted to pursue a career in healthcare and medicine, specifically physical therapy.
Okay.
But when that route decided not to be something I wanted anymore, I kind of went through an existential crisis. I feel like we all do.
Indeed.
And I ended up pursuing my master's degree, and I realized I was really interested in how the body works. And I realized that pregnant women have a completely different physiology compared to women who are not pregnant. So when we realize that the body changes in such ways on its own, it can be really exciting. I call myself a birth nerd. But it definitely started with exercise because very similarly, the body goes through a lot of changes when you put yourself under stress.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
So we will absolutely go into, because I find it fascinating as well how the body changes to accommodate this life that's growing inside. But just to kind of give people some preface to how you got on this journey, do you recall what your ideas were around pregnancy and just, this whole process of growing life in your body? Did you have any messages growing up about what that was like? Did you experience anyone in your immediate surroundings who had, you watched go through this process? What were the messages and your understanding coming in?
Oh man. So even to this day, I only have one nephew. There's only one line of the next generation in my family. And I watched my older sister experience pregnancy firsthand. It was funny because I was only about 11 or 12 years old. So I wasn't even really old enough to know completely what was going on. Just I knew there was going to be a baby here. And I remember when she told me, I didn't even believe her. I was like, no, you're not. You're not telling me the truth. And come to find out, this bundle of joy just came home. And I didn't know a lot about her actual birth story, but that transition of her to I'll say that last 2 weeks, because she was overdue. He was a little late. But that was watching it happen right before me. It was a very enlightening experience. And then watching him go from this bundle of joy, and he'll be 15 next month. So
Yeah. Yeah. So firsthand seeing how that evolution, takes place. So that's amazing. So you said that your initial journey brought you into different aspects of the body and how it functions, and then you were exposed to the pregnancy aspect side of that, or like
Yeah.
how did that transition, and what was one of some of the most fascinating things that you learned about the body as it changes?
So I know I really got really into just womanhood and revisiting what womanhood meant for me at some point. But also in my master's program, you're kind of encouraged to pick a specialty,
Mhm.
whether it's cardiac rehab or cancer populations. And after doing enough rotations and reading and research, I realized one, there wasn't a lot of research on pregnant women and what exercise looks like to them. But then I realized as I entered these spaces that there's a whole different aspect of birth. Exercise is like not necessarily a priority.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
But I realized that exercise had a lot of benefit. And that's kind of where I transitioned because I also offer personal training as well as yoga instruction with my clients as a doula. So that has been definitely a nice little add-on. And I've seen the results with the clients that do sign up with me and do exercise. Most of those babies come early and labor is not as long.
Yeah, the body, that is so amazing. And then the fact that include that in your services, because I did yoga for my youngest, then like throughout the, prenatal yoga. And it does, you stretch, you're moving, you are, getting low so we can drop down.
Mhm.
So what are some of the benefits that you express to your clients in reference to doing yoga and that aspect of it?
So one of the biggest things I know I focus on, especially if I'm training with them for their entire term,
Mhm.
is that posture. Hyperlordosis, or the curvature in the back, can become exaggerated as that weight shifts forward.
Yeah.
And God forbid you have back labor. So I really try to encourage exercise, not just for the physical muscular aspect, but posture and body position, because it's very easy for us to let our body just let gravity pull us where we want it to.
Mhm.
But and encouraging that back exercise and those other stretches, my clients, some of them had whether it was a Bengkung belly bind or
Mhm.
just a support
So,
based belt,
mhm.
they usually don't need it by the third trimester, because once you train the back to be able to support that weight, it does it for you.
Right.
But also even just that flexibility, like you said, it helps the hips open up and allows baby to become more engaged within the pelvis.
Wow.
And just also just moderating that gestational diabetes, that
Mhm.
preeclampsia, and all those other horrible contraindications that we don't want with our pregnancy, because exercise helps moderate our glucose and our insulin, as well as it helps moderate our vasculature related to hypertension. So,
Wow. No, that is phenomenal because just that connection, I didn't initially make that. I think like diet, yes, but exercise is a key part of that. So thank you for bringing, the awareness to that. So from a perspective of just someone who might be listening,
mhm.
what do you work with women who preconception, like who are considering pregnancy, and what would be some of the things that they could do to prepare to put them in the best, state possible for that, pregnancy, labor, and delivery?
Oh yeah. So the thing research shows, or let me put it this way. The guidelines for exercise is whatever you're doing at before you're pregnant, you can maintain that level of activity or increase it slightly. So even if you don't work out,
Mhm.
you can start working out in the first trimester and still get all those benefits. But in terms of preconception, I usually really encourage people not just to focus on that cardio, because you want those endorphins running through your body. You want that hormone regulation, especially with things like ovulation in your cycle.
Yeah.
But also, like you touched on a little bit, nutrition is key. If you eat terrible, it doesn't matter how much exercise you do, it's not going to do your body any good. So I think a few of those things, diet, like you had mentioned, that cardio. I do encourage weight training. I make my clients lift weights. You should see some of these pregnant women throwing these kettlebells. But it's one, it's very empowering for them, but also it allows them to have that sense of confidence. And when they go into delivery already having that motivation and that confidence with physical activity, labor is physical activity.
The marathon, right? That's what you're training for, the marathon.
Absolutely.
Yes. Wow. Now that is awesome. And just really to hear you articulate just the value and the benefit of that. I personally don't see that talked about as much when it comes to, preparing for babies, or even just the conversation of solutions, right? Like we hear these statistics, we hear about, the outcomes that mothers are experiencing, particularly Black mothers, in this whole process and experience. And I like to come from a solutions oriented space. And it sounds like, what you're talking about is something key that definitely needs more light shed upon it, as to how can we feel empowered? How can we feel prepared? What are some of the additional things? And we know that having a doula adds to a positive and favorable outcomes. But you just added another layer for me as to, how else we can prepare and increase the possibilities of having a favorable outcome. So Blue Moon Doula Services, how did that come about? What are some of the services that you're offering?
So how did it come about? When I decided to be a doula, I was like, oh man, I got to start a business. That was never in my life plan. I used to always say I'm gonna work for somebody so I don't have to think that hard. Here I am, pretty much the most independent I think I've ever been in terms of my financial situation.
Wow.
The concept started, I guess you could say the concept, like the name Blue Moon. I have a lot of associations, even in my personal life, with the lunar cycle. I practice a lot of spiritual aspects, like, crystals, witchcraft, things like that. So very non-traditional.
Yeah.
But that concept of, I love the name Blue Moon just because you've heard the phrase, every once in a blue moon.
Right.
It's a concept that's rare, it's unique. And I think that was what I was trying to describe for my service for Black women. Just because I know I wanted to offer a few different things. But a lot of my services, I primarily am a labor and delivery support doula, but I also do placenta encapsulations. That has become a really big, popular, not necessarily trend, but I think in terms of my services and getting booked, that has definitely been on the upscale. And I can talk about the benefits of those in just a second. But I also do things like I crochet baby blankets, and those are gifts to my clients. And I also provide those services for baby shower gifts, things like that. And I make Benkung belly binds as well.
Okay. That's the fabric that you kind of bind all the way up. Absolutely. And maybe we could talk about some of the benefits of binding postpartum. Yes. So you're doing the doula services, and obviously you have, a lot of add-ons that are definitely valuable to this whole process. So I guess for those who aren't familiar with placenta encapsulation, what is that? How did you get into it? And what are the benefits?
So placenta encapsulation is the process of taking a mother's placenta, or mom and baby's placenta, and putting it into microcapsules for her to consume. Now, the first time I heard of this, I remember thinking, excuse me?
Right.
But then I actually dug around and did research, and this is not new. It's not new at all. I've been doing it now, I think about 7-8 months.
Okay.
I've been going for a while.
Yeah.
But what stuck out to me was, of course, me being the birth nerd, the science nerd. I was like, let me see what this directly helps. And that hormone regulation and that hormone balance postpartum, it helps with that. It helps with lactation. And depending on how you prepare it, I mostly steam mine just because of, risk that comes with raw meat.
Mm-hmm.
But if I know a mom had a really traumatic surgery or like C-section or she hemorrhaged, I would lean into doing the raw method because that helps with blood loss as well as replenishing of iron.
Okay.
So there are, depending on how you mix it up, some
Mm-hmm.
benefits. But it really does help with recovery and helps mom and baby get back onto a different, well, not pre-pregnancy, but leveling out from all those hormones from delivery and the last trimester.
Oh, wow. And that's so significant because we were growing an entire human, and and I definitely want you to touch on the physiological changes, because not just your organs moving and like the additional fluids, but you're being depleted. Like everything that you have is going into this. And so are those vitamins and minerals and things being captured in the placenta? Is that part of the benefit?
Absolutely, because that was what baby was using whenever mom was eating. So that relationship is very established. And even certain parts of the placenta, like the cord or the chorion, the outer layer, provide more nutrient benefits. And whether moms want to have the placenta for a keepsake or add it to their capsules is also an option as well. And you can also do things like tinctures, where you take a piece of the placenta and you ferment it in a bottle for about 6 to 8 weeks. And that's like your little dose of personal medicine whenever you or baby aren't well.
Wow.
So these are all natural things that our bodies have been able to figure out with a little bit of alchemy, with a little bit of chemistry on our hands, but we are still able to benefit from this. And I still get the look sometimes when I get new clients, like, do you want to keep your placenta? They're like, no.
Right. And I find that fascinating because it really is perspective. And it's like, you can eat a burger, right, that comes from a cow or some other animal species, or you can drink the milk of some other animal species. But the idea of something that is natural, that comes from you, and that is nutrient dense, it's like this. And culturally, we're programmed.
Culturally is definitely the biggest thing.
And to see it as, and to normalize it. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm glad that you're saying that you're getting a lot of business over these last, several months, because that means more people have an awareness of it, and it's being somewhat normalized, at least in certain, communities or subcultures of this culture, that we're going back to what we've done, what is ancient and documented as being something of value. So
absolutely. My mom is a nurse. My mother has been a nurse for like 30 years. And when I told her I was doing this, she looked at me like I grew a head.
Okay.
She's like, you were doing what in your house?
With what? Yes. In Western medicine, it's, everything has its place. So there's value, and I can find value in all aspects of, what is going on. So if you ever lose a limb or something breaks, like there's something and somewhere you can go for that. But I definitely try to steer the conversation around pregnancy, especially. It's not a medical issue. It's not a health. It's not a pre-existing condition. It is as natural as breathing.
Yep.
So to treat it as such, and to have the idea in your mind that you have to, it has to be in a hospital, or it has to fit into this category, it really is something that is so natural, and we're naturally prepared for. And when we, like you said, come from an empowered space, and you feel prepared for the process, it really can be a transformative and beautiful experience. So do you have any stories from, working with mothers or birthing people, just around kind of what was an example of why it is you do this work or what you find so rewarding about it?
Oh man, I've got a couple of those stories. I can use one of my faves. And well, I'll share an experience about a family that I helped. They were, I think they were my first couple that I had worked with since I had started working towards my certification. And they were just so sweet. And I knew them from college, and they were like, "We want you to be our doula." And I was like, "Okay." But I was also thinking, oh God, I hope I don't mess up. Like I don't want to. I think I had a lot of anxiety in the beginning about if I was doing well. But they were. It was interesting because she was one. She was definitely my first personal training client as well. We were meeting 3 times a week, and it would be so funny because we would be in the living room doing workouts. This is all in COVID, by the way, so I'm in their house.
Yes.
And we would be in there, and he's first thing in the morning, she's doing her workout, and he walks by eating breakfast, like, "Good job, babe." We're both like,
okay.
And we would tease and say he could come with us to, you can come work out with us. He's like, "Nah, I'm good. She's the one having the baby. It's cool." And it was beautiful. I remember her waters broke spontaneously.
Yes.
At 36 weeks.
Okay.
So it was considered preterm, but in my mind, I was like, I think he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
But I remember getting a call, and he was like, "I think her water broke." I was like, it's funny because, and this is a trend also, whenever I call or I get a call about someone's water breaking or someone's possibly in labor, it's always a parent or a dad. And I always ask to speak to the pregnant mom, and she's always gone. Like, "Oh, she went for a walk."
Oh.
And I'm like, "So she think her water broke and she's just taking a stroll around the neighborhood." Okay. That's great. But her water broke spontaneously, but her water broke. We don't know when it broke. It broke in her sleep.
Oh, wow.
And she was in labor for about, they called me at 4 p.m. She said she woke up that morning and her water had broken.
Wow. Okay.
So she was in early labor the whole time. I was so excited yet so nervous.
Yes.
But that boy showed up quick. It was almost like it happened because they were joking. They were like, "We thought we had 4 more weeks. We thought we had time." Like,
right. Prepare. No.
And it was so funny because I remember through her all of our meetings, she was like, "I don't know how I'm going to deal with the pain." And she did very well with the pain.
Okay.
So it was their first baby. They had only been married for about a year, like beautiful, just like ideal experience.
Right.
And I think for me, it was like, this is why I do what I do. Not only just because I was able to be a part of that, but just all the emotion and all the energy in the room. And I just love the idea of being able to share that space with people and being honored to share that space. Like, you chose me. Thank you.
Right.
And I actually saw her and her son in Target the other day, and she was like, "You should come by sometime." And he is just the most beautiful chocolate little baby.
Oh.
Like, it's just, and she's like, "Yeah, we've been good." It's the ones that are so welcoming and so excited to learn. Because Dad was also like, "I got questions. So what is this?"
I need you to know. I'm gonna need you to know and feel confident and comfortable. Very nice.
Yes.
Very nice. And then that whole, what do they call it? Like that birth high of being in the space when new life comes into the world. And I can only
I don't think I haven't ever not cried. I've cried at every birth.
Yeah. And for me, it's been like snotty cries. And it's only been my children. I've never attended like the birth of other people. But it's like this whole euphoric kind of feeling. And it's like, oh my God, it's a baby. So yeah, that is amazing. It really is. So you mentioned COVID. How are you pivoting, or how have you modified your services to accommodate for wherever we are in this process, because sometimes things are open, sometimes things are not. I heard that they were reducing how many people could be in the space, all of those things.
So I think for me with COVID, what I've done pretty well so far is when it comes to the prenatal visits, there are some that I have specifically virtually because there's not a lot of physical interaction. So when we're doing things like the birth plan or making a checklist or things like that, it's like, yeah, we can have a FaceTime call. Let's do a Zoom call. But when it comes to comfort techniques and showing you how we're going to work the body and how we're going to shift you around, those are always the in-person visits. And I just keep transparency with my clients about, because I tell people all the time, I'm not around these people. I'm around pregnant women, so I can't afford to be around people acting crazy. So, but when it comes to like actual labor and delivery, I've tried to help them labor at home. We usually always labor at home, just because most people go to the hospital too soon. And also with hospital restrictions, it can be really hard depending on if you are up to date with the policy in this area, on if you're allowed in, if you're not a registered or a vendor doula. So I typically, I do offer partial packages where I offer virtual support just in case I'm not able to physically be there. But also I've actually started leaning more into home birth.
Yes.
I love. I haven't had my first one. I have a client. I have two. I have two people who were like, I want to do a home birth, and they chose me. Those are coming very, very soon, November. But I'm excited because I already know the atmosphere is different. I can tell by even just how we're going to these midwifery appointments, things are different.
Wow.
And it's going to be an experience. And I don't think I don't want to completely shift away from hospital because I know, community needs it, but it's also like, maybe I can get you guys to come over here because this is a little bit better. And if you're not sick, if you have a healthy pregnancy, there's really no reason not to.
Right.
So,
well, I'm gonna have you back on so you can share that experience, because I'm such an advocate of out of hospital births, because that's what my experiences have been. And I don't know the contrast personally, but I've heard enough stories to know that there is a significant difference. And one thing that you mentioned about being able to create the space, right? So I can have my crystals around me. I can have candles burning and incense going. I could sage the room. I could do all the things, play the music that's going to keep me in the vibration that I want to be in. I could do all of those things in the comfort of a space I'm familiar with. Lights dim. Like there's so much to the experience when you change the setting. So I would love to hear, how that works out for you, and just even your contrast of what those experiences have been and what this one, these experiences are like. So before you go, I definitely would like for you to just share your contact information. Let us know the areas in which you work is virtual for everyone. Some of the services you provide, please let everybody know how to get in touch with you.
Oh yeah. So it is on Instagram. It's @blue_moon_doula. @blue_moon_doula. I service the Greensboro Triad area. I also do some births in the Triangle area. And I do offer virtual support if you do want to have a completely virtual service. Yeah, my services are prenatal trainings, postpartum trainings. I offer Bengkung belly binds, crocheted baby blankets. That's always so weird to shout out. And I'm gonna be pursuing lactation soon, so we didn't even get to talk about that. So
again, we got to have you back again. The 30 minutes, when the conversation is good, the 30 minutes goes by so fast. It's like there is so much to talk about, and I appreciate the conversation because we can't have it enough. And we can talk about birth and pregnancy and health and wellness, all day, every day, because it's necessary. Absolutely. So I appreciate all that it is that you do. You definitely, enlighten me in certain areas. And I hope that the audience, found the value in it. Please share, reach out to Angelica, tap into Blue Moon Doula Services. Yes. And we will continue this conversation. So thank you all for joining us this evening. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you guys. You guys have a good night.
Peace and blessings, family.